he tricks people by dancing and having silly hair, and you go, oh, that's a killer.
Do you think Paddy deserves a title shot, or he's not ready to face somebody like Islam?
Paddy's ready to face anybody.
I think one day he will be.
A lot of people crumble because they have all this hype behind them, but then their fights off the UFC are all padded records. Yeah, their hype isn't really justified, you know, and some of them sip their own Kool-Aid too much, get drunk off it. I just sip mine because I know it's nice. I'm nice with it. Pimblett, yeah, another guy with a lot of hype behind him. I jumped in the UFC, talked that shit, and he walked that shit too. I like what he's doing. I like the haircut, but I like what he's doing. I like how he's owning everything and just telling it like it is. Speaking his truth.
Look at me, I've got the personality, the look, and I can fight. I'm a marketer's wet dream.
The world of professional mixed martial arts is rarely a place where appearances match reality, and perhaps no fighter in the modern era embodies this cognitive dissonance more than the man known to the world as Paddy Pimblett. To the casual observer scanning a UFC card, the sight of a blonde-maned scouser with a bowl cut, a mischievous grin, and a penchant for dancing into the octagon might suggest a gimmick or a colorful side character meant for mid-card entertainment. They see the silly hair, the bravado, and the infectious energy, and they think they are watching a performer. However, as a growing list of world-class lightweights has discovered the hard way, that perception is a dangerous trap. Behind the theatrics and the scouts lies a tactical killer whose evolution from a regional hype train to a genuine elite contender has fundamentally shifted the landscape of the 155-pound division as we move into 2026. The question that once dominated MMA forums, whether Paddy deserves a title shot or if he is simply being protected from the likes of Islam Makhachev, has been answered not by words, but by a trail of high-profile victims. The journey of Paddy Pimblett is a masterclass in the intersection of personality and performance. When he signed with the UFC in 2021, he arrived not as a blank slate, but as a 16-3 prospect who had already conquered the European circuit in Cage Warriors. Even then, he understood his value with a clarity that bordered on prophetic. He famously described himself as a marketer's wet dream, citing his unique look, his undeniable charisma, and his ability to actually fight as a trifecta of stardom that the UFC had not seen since the peak of the McGregor era. Yet, for all his self-assurance, the skepticism was suffocating. His first UFC opponent, Luigi Vendramini, epitomized the early narrative surrounding Pimblett, viewing his confidence as arrogance and his talk as a facade for a padded record. On the night of his debut, for a few terrifying moments, it looked like the skeptics might be right. Vendramini landed heavy shots early, wobbling the Liverpool native and threatening to end the hype train before it even left the station. But it was in that moment of adversity that the world saw the first glimpse of Pimblett's true grit. He didn't just survive. He roared back with a sensational knockout that silenced the arena and ignited a global conversation. It was a declaration of intent. Paddy wasn't just here to participate. He was here to take over. This pattern of early adversity followed by a dominant finish became a recurring theme that only added to his mystique. By the time he faced Cazilla Vargas in London in March 2022, the Paddy Power phenomenon had reached a fever pitch. Despite being taken down early and facing a barrage of pressure, Pimblett maintained a preternatural calm, eventually finding the finish in just 4 minutes. The numbers back then told the story better than any analyst could. While heavyweight title fights were pulling respectable numbers on social media, Paddy's face-offs were generating 10 times the engagement, crossing the million-view threshold with ease. He had become a bigger star than many established champions, a fact that bred resentment among some of his peers, but solidified his status as the UFC's most valuable new asset. The internal pressure to justify such monumental hype can break even the most seasoned athletes, but Pimblett seemed to thrive on the animosity of his detractors. Jordan Levitt entered their bout with a mission to deconstruct the Flash and prove that Paddy was nothing more than a social media creation. Levitt's dismissive attitude was a gamble that failed spectacularly. Pimblett dismantled him over 2 rounds, showcasing a grappling prowess that many had overlooked in favor of his striking. Even the legends of the sport, including former champions and GOAT contenders, began to take notice. They saw the skills behind charisma, the long limbs, the creative submissions, and the undeniable star power. They began to ponder the once unthinkable. Could this bowl-cut wearing kid from Liverpool actually hold the gold strap at 155 pounds? However, Every meteoric rise faces a plateau, and for Pimblett, that moment came against Jared Gordon. It was a performance that many saw as a regression. Paddy struggled to find his rhythm, and when the judges' scorecards were read in his favor, a wave of controversy swept through the MMA community. Many pros and fans alike felt Gordon had done enough to win, and for a period the all-hype labels returned with vengeance. Critics pointed to his defensive lapses and claimed he would be mauled by the top 5. Pimblett, however, remained unfazed, later revealing he had fought through a significant injury that required surgery. While the MMA world debated his legitimacy, Conor McGregor stepped in to offer a virtual pat on the back, perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit in a fighter who could polarize an entire industry. The true turning point in the Pimblett narrative came during his return against the legendary Tony Ferguson. While El Chuchui was on the tail end of his historic career, he remained a dangerous and durable veteran. Paddy didn't just win, he dominated for 3 rounds. He showcased a more structured, disciplined version of himself, proving that he had spent his time away from the cage, evolving into a more complete martial artist. This victory was the first brick in a new foundation of respect. He wasn't just beating prospects anymore. He was handling veterans with the poise of a future champion. Yet, the real test of his scary potential arrived at UFC 304 against Bobby King Green. Green, a seasoned brawler with some of the slickest hands in the division, was supposed to be the man to expose Paddy's striking. Instead, Pimblett overwhelmed him with relentless forward pressure and a grappling display that left the arena stunned. Finishing a veteran like Green with a triangle choke was a statement that couldn't be ignored. Even the reigning king of the division, Islam Makhachev, had to acknowledge that the king had been conquered by a legitimate threat. By the time UFC 314 rolled around, the Pimblett hype train had been replaced by a freight train of momentum. His opponent, Michael Chandler, was a human highlight reel, a powerhouse who many expected to end Paddy's run with a first-round knockout. The betting lines and the pro picks favored the American's explosive power. But Pimblett, ever the strategist, saw the openings that others missed. He anticipated Chandler's aggressive entries and used his length and range to stifle the onslaught. In a performance that will be remembered as his definitive coming-out party, Pimblett dominated both the striking exchanges and the ground game, eventually securing a 3rd-round TKO. In the aftermath, a humbled Chandler admitted that Paddy was far better than anyone gave him credit for. He noted that while Paddy might not possess godlike power in a single shot, he is crazy good in every direction, a jack of all trades whose height and reach make him a nightmare at a time. This sentiment was echoed by Dana White, who finally told the doubters to step out of their bubbles. The evidence was now undeniable. Paddy Pimblett had beaten the elite. Javier Mendez, the architect behind some of the greatest champions in history, publicly stated that Pimblett was not just ready for a title shot, but that he deserved it based on credentials and his unique ability to motivate the masses, earning a title shot in the UFC's most.